Extreme legendary characters. I'm positive everybody knows about them by now. They're just the most broken things in the game. But there are extreme legendary characters that may be considered low tier. All EXs are equal, but some are more equal than others. What does that term mean, you may be asking? This is where the whole grading of EXs pop up. Some EXs are buns, Whitebeard, while others are either broken or just straight up balanced. I'm sure we all know about the most broken EXs to be released, like the infamous S-Snake, which nobody likes, Gear 5 V2, Kuzan, Garp, and Kizaru. Kizaru legitimately made a lot of players quit the game, bro. These units have busted traits, busted skills, busted mechanics, and dominated metas when they dropped. But that's not the issue, or my point that I've come to bring. We have mid-tier EXs, like Green Runner Kaido or Red Defender Big Mom. But you also have low-tier EXs. This is where units like the new EX Law, EX Sabo, EX White Shanks, and EX Blue Big Mom pop up. Now, when I say low, mid, and high tier EXs, I'm referring to how they performed when they first dropped, not how they are right now. But how do you classify a low tier EX? You're probably asking that. Well, it's quite simple. Just ask these 4 questions. 1. Does this unit rely on states? 2. Does this unit rely on a gimmick to be good? 3. Does this unit's traits save them in the meta? 4. Are the skills good enough for the meta? Though I must add that there must be at least 2 of these criterias in the negatives for the EX to be considered low tier. For example, EX Akainu and Filmred Shanks rely on states, but they can kinda survive without them and have good traits to back up my point. But that's where Sabo and EX White Shanks failed. They relied too much on states. And the gimmick stuff, especially with Shanks, he was just way too reliant on it, right? Because even now, if you observe it, there are units that recover all of their HP in like seconds, making his guaranteed KO useless if he's not putting out enough damage. And to make it worse, their traits are just too lackluster without their states to actually even work. But now you're probably gonna crash out on me. Why is EX Law on this list? Because he's broken. But I got a rebuttal to that, bro. Just let me cook. Law does indeed not rely on states and has good skills and damage. That I cannot deny. That's unrefutable. And to top that off, they even gave him a guaranteed capture trait, and his capture speed is abysmal. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. But remember criteria 2 and 3. Does this unit rely on a gimmick to be good, or do their traits save them? In summary, the unit cannot be a straight up one-trick pony. Law does indeed have good capture traits, but his survivability is where everything goes downhill. Now, a perfect EX is probably what y'all think I'm looking for. And you'd be right. But what I'm trying to argue right now is the fact that Bandai set Law in such a way that he's only going to last like, what, 1 or 2 metas? To be honest, the second EX Blackbeard drops, he's gone. He's finished. We aren't seeing back from Law for the next 2 anniversaries. He's gone. And I'll explain to you why. He only gets heals from Marines, barely has any real selling points, other than defense, which everyone ignores, and a 1 HP trait, which I don't even have to explain why it's bad. And to make it worse, the guy becomes flat out useless if inflicted by status effects like Capture Block, Anti-Heal, and that attack nullification status effect that Ben Beckman and Blackbeard have. Basically, it nullifies your ability to attack. making law useless because, as you know, law needs his skills, and his counter is actually counted as a skill, if you get what I'm saying. So if, say, the new Blackbeard has that dark status effect, bro won't even be able to counter. He won't be able to M1. All he'll be able to do is just dodge. It will be worse than having a Claude Yace. And as we all know, a Claude Yace is basically useless. Now multiply that by 2, because at least Yace has his second skill, but Law has none. Law was made to be a Saturn and Kuzan counter. 2 units that did not need any more counters, by the way. He also mildly, in a way, countered Kizaru too, but Kizaru can bypass that by just not using his skill 1. That's where Law gets most of his heal. Now to close my point, it isn't that Law is bad. Any competent player can use Law properly. He has the traits to be used. But my point is that he doesn't have surviving traits. And a unit without surviving traits just won't last long. So in summary, I would really suggest reading traits when y'all are pulling for EXs. Or you might end up with EXs like Saturn or EX Law. 2 units that are basically guaranteed to fall off in like 2 metas. So personally, all of these factors just make me avoid state-reliant units or gimmick-reliant units like Law or Sabo. And I really suggest that y'all should too if you want long-lasting EXs. Because I know the guys that only have Saturn are gonna be suffering soon. And that's sad. Now, as usual, I'd like to ask that y'all let me share some verses with y'all, but feel free to skip if you want. Today's verses comes from Proverbs 3, 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight.